All right, everybody, here we go. Some more video FRQs. This is from the 2018 exam. I placed it on this handout, sample FRQs, practice with the loanable funds market. So just an interesting thread to talk to you guys about is that in 2018 and 2017, one of the short FRQs had the loanable funds market involved in it. So I think it's important that we focus on that and focus on the different elements of the loanable funds. So just in case anything about the loanable funds market graph is problematic for you, Mr. Clifford has two really great videos on the loanable funds market. One is brand new as of the fall of 2018, so definitely take advantage of those. They're available on his YouTube channel. Also, the loanable funds market graph is on pages 366 to 67 of your textbook, which is actually in the microeconomics section of the book. So when you read stuff in chapter 36 about loanable funds, or in chapter 31 about loanable funds and about how borrowing drives up interest rates, the authors are already assuming that you know that information from the earlier part of the textbook that's about microeconomics. So just a couple of things before we get started to keep you thinking of all that stuff. All right, so I'm going to do my best with this question. I feel like it's a little ambiguous how to pronounce this fictional country, so I'm going to go with Ucheland, if that's okay with everybody. Assume that the economy of Ucheland is currently at full employment. The government of Ucheland reduces the tax rate on household interest earnings. So first of all, think about fiscal policy and think about tax rates. I'm just going to highlight this. I think some of my students in 2018 were a little bit unclear as to what this meant. So first of all, with fiscal policy, anytime we're reducing taxes, we're probably meant to do this because we want to expand the economy. The second thing is, what does it mean on household interest earnings? So just as a little aside, when you put money away in the bank, so let's say this is your bank and you've decided you're going to put your $10,000 away in a savings account, and that savings account is going to earn you 10% interest, and that's pretty amazing. That really hasn't happened in my lifetime, but let's use some easy numbers. So over time, your original $10,000, let's say at the end of the year, is going to appreciate to $11,000. And therefore, you've made a profit of $1,000 just in interest. So the federal government considers this interest that you've earned to be new income. So when you file your income taxes at the end of the year, you have to pay taxes on the interest that you've earned. So imagine if the government, like the government in Ucheland, decided, let's reduce that tax. This would be an incentive for households to put money away in savings, okay? So that is kind of important for you to understand before you do this question. Now, let's say you walked into the exam and you didn't know that. I feel like you guys are savvy enough to problem solve that. So just have faith in yourself that you can figure that out. But if not, that's really how it would go. So first of all, for part A, because there's going to be a tax reduction on interest, this means that people are going to put more money away in banks and that private savings are going to increase. So I'm just going to write the word increase. On the actual AP exam, I would encourage you to write a full sentence that says private savings will increase in Ucheland. Why not? For these tutorials, I'm just trying to show you what the correct answers are, but just consider that. All right. Part B. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the loanable funds market and show the effect of the change in private savings identified in Part A on the equilibrium real interest rate. Okay, so now we get to graph. So the loanable funds graph is just a supply and demand graph. It's the supply and demand of loanable funds. So we have to just squeeze in that little LF there. It's real interest rates here. We're going to do the intersection of the current real interest rate equilibrium. We're going to put a little subscript E. We're going to do the quantity of loanable funds over here. So this is just your basic graph. You're going to typically get 1 point for just doing the loanable funds graph in this fashion. Now we have to do what we said in part A. So national savings have increased. Please remember, who are the savers? Who are the people that are putting money away in banks?
Oh, and Grady, please.
Households and businesses.
Grady, the main office.
So households and businesses are putting away money, they're savers. So if they're going to put more money away in savings, then the supply of loanable funds is going to shift to the right. And we're going to slide that line to the right. The interest rates are going to fall. And we are going to write a little caption on the side that says real interest rates decrease. Now, why would this not be a demand shifter for loanable funds? Well, just because households are saving more does not mean that they are going to demand fewer loans. I could put away an extra $200 a month, but I might still need to borrow $15,000 to buy a new car. So don't confuse savings with that people's borrowing needs are just nullified by the fact that they can save more money. Often remember that borrowing is large quantities of money and saving is typically happening in smaller increments. Okay, so now we get to sort of take this information back to our macro concepts. Given the real interest rate change identified in part B, answer the following questions. Number one, what is the short run effect on aggregate demand? Explain. 2, what is the long run effect on the potential real gross domestic product in Ucheland? Explain. So remember the long run effect, what I see when I see that is that they're asking me, how is this going to impact the GDP over time because of the lower real interest rates? And so let's walk ourselves through that. We've got short run and long run. So first of all, in the short run, if I were to visualize aggregate demand, now remember, I don't have to draw this on my exam. So I'm just going to do this little baby graph here. And remember the question said it was fully employed. So I'm not doing all my labels, but this is aggregate demand. If interest rates are lower, then that's going to drive up aggregate demand. And that's going to increase price level. It's going to increase GDP in the short run. So this is going to increase aggregate demand. Why? Well, first of all, I'm going to say aggregate demand, will increase due to greater interest sensitive consumption. And remember, interest-sensitive consumption is a great way of summarizing both consumer spending and business investment. That's C and IG, part of aggregate demand, as a result of lower real interest rates. So that answer implies people are going to borrow more, businesses are going to borrow more, they're going to turn that money into spending. Boom, there's my answer for part one. Now for part two, I have to explain how this is going to impact the real gross domestic product in the long run. So bear with me here. If lower interest rates are going to cause more business investment, we can assume that that business investment is going to be in capital. As a result of that, you can envision that that capital investment is going to increase productivity and therefore short-run aggregate supply would shift to the right. And ultimately, we could see that long-run aggregate supply over time shifting too. So the long-run impact would be that real GDP will increase in the long run due to the capital formation or the capital development that will result from greater business investment. Now, this is the correct answer that's supplied by the College Board. And I think it's the right answer, but I think that it's tough for some students to understand because you might be saying to yourself, well, how do we know that the increased borrowing as a result of the lower interest rates actually results in better capital that's going to increase productivity, shift short-run aggregate supply to the right, and then eventually this means that the long run is going to shift too. The difficult answer to your question is we don't know. But what we're operating here on is a macroeconomic theory that if we lower interest rates, then businesses will have incentive to borrow that money, and their incentive to develop capital goods to increase their production and productivity is advantageous for their businesses. So we should assume that this is what they're going to do with that investment that they're going to have. There's no way to know that for sure, but what we can assume is that this is the chain of command of events that would occur. So there's lower interest rates, businesses are going to invest in more, and that investment is going to result in more capital development. I apologize for the 2 PA interruptions during the video, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks.